carbohydrates, fat, and fiber. You want to look at the total here. So you basically don't want to go above 2 to 1 as far as carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. So in other words, looking at a label, 40 grams of carbohydrates, right? Okay, how many grams of protein do they have? How many grams of fiber do they have? And add those up. Put that in a ratio to that 40. Is it 2 to 1 or less?
Oh, so add the protein, the fat, and the fiber.
And the fiber.
And see if that's the ratio of 2 to 1. And the carbs should be the higher?
Carbs should be higher, but no more than 2 to 1 ratio.
Okay, so the carbs should be higher.
Yeah. So one of the things the complicated we label them is like, when you look at the fiber first, you have 4 grams of fiber. Now subtract that from the number of carbohydrates and sugars. Okay, that gives you 16. Now they'll do this. Just add all 3 up. Basically subtract it from the carbohydrate. It should be 2 to 1 or less. That's the simplest way to do it.
Okay.
So if you're eating a high fiber cereal, they may have 7 grams of fiber, 30 grams of carbs, 2 grams of protein, 1 grams of fat. You're at a 30 to 10 ratio, 3 to 1. You got to add some protein or fat to that cereal to get a balance. So what do? Grind up some nuts and seeds, throw them in. Does that make some more sense?
Yeah, that's where I've been having trouble.
Does that make sense to people about how to do it, when you read labels? Now, you don't have to read labels on meat. You don't have to read labels on anything other than package. Because as a general rule, if you're going to eat a packaged cereal, we know it's already processed food. So they're advertising it basically as healthy for fiber, because it has a lot of fiber in it, right? But they're not talking about the content of the food anymore itself. Now, if you look at all processed foods, how many of them say vitamin enriched? That means we took out so much of the good stuff, we can't call this a food anymore. That's literally what it means. So what do? They artificially put these back and now they call it food. Vitamin enriched. Vitamin processed.
What about cheeses?
Okay.
Cheeses are processed.
They are. Would you ever look at the Kraft label and see what it says?
Yeah.
It doesn't say cheese.
It says processed food.
Cheese, food. Doesn't even say cheese. So number one, okay, I'm going to start you off at the extreme, what you don't want to hear. Then I'm going to come back to the middle where you can kind of work it, okay? What is dairy? Right, very basic nature. What is dairy?
Egg milk.
No.
Sour milk.
Dairy is infant milk. That little thing that you go and squeeze, that is the breast milk for an infant of that species. So what I say to women jokingly is, how long are you willing to breastfeed your child for? Right? And by the way, would you offer it to your husband as nutrition?
Yes, if they have cancer.
You won't take it. Just because they go, too sweet. I don't know.
I don't know, my turn.
And you get them away from the ball game to do it, I'd be very impressed. But the bottom line is breast milk for the infant to make them grow very fast, put on weight, and to enhance their immune system. We don't breastfeed. Perfect would be 2 years, potentially in tribal cultures 3 years, right? Because we know the benefits of it. But the question is, would you take your breast milk, spin it down to a cheese, and give it to your dog? I'm doing it to be funny, but the bottom line is we have an infatuation with dairy products. We consume, and Norway consumes more dairy than any other country in the world, and we have the highest osteoporosis fracture rate of any nation in the world.
I have arthritis.
Dairy is a main contributor. Dairy is an inflammatory food, especially from a cow.
So you're saying we shouldn't eat dairy, then?
I'm going to the extreme now. I'm going to start you there.
Okay.
No dairy. Because it's for an infant. It's not for an adult. We don't need to get our bones any bigger. We don't need to get our muscles any bigger. We need to get our systems more optimally stabilized. Dairy doesn't do that. Now, also, most dairy has bacteria in it, hormones, antibiotics, and the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides for the food they serve. Plus, there's not omega-3 in it because they never feed these guys grass. They feed them grain, so it's omega-6s again. So we have all that going against you. Plus, the cow, dairy, protein molecule is so large it irritates the gut. So, now I'm giving you all the bad news. Better news. Goat and sheep, much more akin to what human beings can ingest. If you're going to do dairy, you can goat or sheep form. It's much easier on the system. Secondly, make sure it's organic, no hormones, no antibiotics, etc. And if you can get it grass-fed, God bless you, that's the best. Because the grass-fed will bring in a certain amount of omega-3s into it. Now, are you going to pay through the nose for that? Boulder? Yeah.
But they have it.
What?
But they do have it.
They do have
all
it.
over the world.
But I haven't found it, but I heard there are farms out here also that sell right off the farms.
Yeah, yeah.
And that,
But they can't call it organic. They're not allowed to.
But they're pretty clean from what
They
I
are,
heard.
yeah.
Someone was telling me they get for a pound of grass-fed, quote, organic butter, they pay $8 to $10. I'm thinking, well, I don't like butter that much. I'm not good at all of that. But the idea is to shift to with arthritis as a general rule, no dairy.
Really?
None. Because they basically, it's pro-inflammatory as a general rule.
So if no dairy, then what? Soy milk? Or which is better?
Soy is not meant to be a food.
So almond milk?
Yes. But
Okay.
now you look at the almond milk, what's the label say?
Almonds?
Proteins, carbs, fat.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so
I don't eat it, so I don't know.
What I'm saying is, this is where it gets tricky. Because you look at that, and all of a sudden, you go, well, see, it's 5 grams of protein per cup, but 25 grams of carbohydrate, 1 gram of fat. I'm sticking that into a cereal at 3-to-1 ratio. You gotta load up on your nuts and your seeds. Really load up. I mean, I don't use milk products when I have cereal. I just when I use millet, I use a 6-to-1 ratio, so it comes out like a mush, so it's already wet. And then I just grind up everything, throw it in there, and I usually use a little bit of butter for the fat extra. So, but arthritis, arthritis is tricky because it depends on the form, but you have to stick with non-inflammatory foods. And even your red meats will be part of that. All your processed meats are part of that. You have your fishes, chicken, and turkeys. You can get away with things like ostrich and bison more than you can beef. Lots of fruits and vegetables, nuts, grains. Pretty people have to be clean. You have to watch out for the nightshade foods. They call nightshade foods. It's a group of foods that have a compound called proline in it. Nightshade foods. Tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, eggplant, paprika. Usually are the worst offenders. Yeah.
So if you like it, you can't eat it.
Yeah. Once your body really starts breaking down, the food you eat the most are probably ones you're most addicted to and worse ones for you.
Right.
Sorry.
What about turmeric and the turmeric teas and stuff like that?
Fine, it's a good spice, good herb, has anti-inflammatory properties. Turmeric, curcumin, ginger, they're all anti-inflammatory. Rosemary, those are all good.
So if you go on your recommended diet and exercise program, how long does it take to clean yourself up and get to that point where you're healthy for the rest of your life? How long would it take?
The rest of your life.
Yeah, about 6 weeks after you're in the ground, you can rest assured you're okay at that point. Yeah, see, the thing is, this is where again it gets tricky. I'm just giving you a basic format of how to start off.
Right.
That's not individualized. So in your situation, if you were to have a strong hormonal imbalance, if that goes uncorrected, the foods I'm going to take you so far, the person over here has kidney weakness, different ages can take your constitutional types, make a big difference. Weight makes a big difference. Genetics makes a difference. You know, in my situation, they're going on my father's side of the family died from cancer. On the other side, they're going from cardiovascular disease. I'm batting 0 genetically. Both are inflammatory diseases, though. And most of them are diseases of, what is that? Yeah, right. And most of them are diseases of the modern age. So I'm a fairly disciplined person. People hate being around me most of the time.
Well, do you do like that real age and, real age
Chronological
versus...
age? No, I don't do that because it's just a number and it doesn't take many variables